Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Buckrider Spring 2022 launch. I actually can't believe it's spring 2022 already. It feels like it's been a very long winter this year, but the sun is out and there are some leaves on the trees and a few flowers coming, so I know it is time to bring out some more fabulous books. So my name is Noelle Allen. For anybody who doesn't know me, I tend to forget to introduce myself. I am the publisher of Woolsack and Wim. And pretty soon I will be turning this over to our brilliant spring authors and to our senior editor, Paul Vermeersch, who will do our introductions and will lead us through the evening. But first, I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank also our funders for making this possible. Without the support of groups such as the Canada Council for the Arts, the Department of Canadian Heritage, and the Ontario Arts Council, we would not be able to make the incredible books that we bring out every season. And before we get going, I'd also like to do a land acknowledgement. And I know we're all in different areas, but Woolsack and Win is really, really lucky to be located in Hamilton, a warm, welcoming city, which is also situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We further acknowledge that this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Today, the city of Hamilton is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we recognize that we must do more to learn about the rich history of this land so that we can better understand our roles as residents, neighbors, partners, and caretakers. I'd also like to note that for those of you who may find it useful, we have enabled captioning for this event. Now, we have a wonderful evening of readings ahead of us here, and Paul Vermeersch is going to guide us through it, as I'd already said. And while many of you may know Paul, I'd like to take a moment here to introduce him to those of you who may not. Paul Vermeersch is a poet, multimedia artist, creative writing professor, and literary editor. He is the author of several poetry collections, including Reinventing the Human Hand, a finalist for the 2011 Trillium Book Award, and most recently, Shared Universe, New and Selected Poems. He holds an MFA in creative writing from the University of Guelph, for which he received the Governor General's Gold Medal. He teaches in the Honors Bachelor of Creative Writing and Publishing program at Sheridan College and is the founding editor of the Ampersand Review of Writing and Publishing, a literary journal published by Sheridan's Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, and is also the founding editor of Buckrider Books, our fiction and poetry imprint here at Woolsack and Win. He lives in Toronto. And Paul, I will turn this over to you.
Thank you very much, Noelle. Thank you for that introduction. Of course, none of these books would get published without our publisher, Noelle Allen. And behind the scenes, I really must thank our managing editor, Ashley Hisson, and our production coordinator, Jen Rollinson, who is pulling all the levers and pushing all the buttons that are making this virtual launch run tonight. I'm going to direct you every now and then to the chat window where you can find information about the books that we're launching tonight, especially I think the most important information, how to buy them, because that's why we're all here. And to help you along in that regard, all the books we're launching tonight are 30% off for the rest of the week. That's until Sunday at midnight. So if you buy them from our website, they're 30% off until Sunday at midnight, which is a substantial savings. But beside that, let's get down to our authors. Our authors are why we do this, and they're brilliant, and they bring us wonderful poetry and fiction, and they're and a lot of joy. So it's my pleasure now to introduce you to Dan K. Wu, author of the short story collection Taobao. It is often said that good fiction can transport you to a place or immerse you in a world through its vivid settings and well-drawn characters and its surprising twists and turns. That's the cover of Taobao there. And that's just what the 12 dazzling stories in this brand new collection do. All of them set in present day China. You might be asking yourself, what does Taobao mean? And if you are, I'll tell you. It's not only the name of China's online retail giant, think of Amazon. It also means treasure seeking in Mandarin. And let me tell you that if you are seeking treasure in the literary sense, you have found it. Taobao has already appeared on the most anticipated books list from CBC Books, the Chicago Review of Books, and 49th Shelf. It has received advanced praise from writers Neil Smith and Lindsay Wong, who both say that they love it. And it's already receiving great reviews here and abroad. The author responsible for all this praise is the generously talented Dan K. Wu. It's often said that writers put their blood into their work, and in Dan's case, it's true. His family came to Canada in the 1970s. His grandfather was a fire captain for the first firefighter to die on duty in British Hong Kong, which was partly the result of the British colonial system. In 2018, Dan won the Ken Klonsky Award for his first book, which I am happy to tell you that we are reissuing this fall in November. It's called Letters to Little Comrade. So look forward to that. His writing has appeared elsewhere in such publications as South China Morning Post, Quill Inquirer, and China Daily USA. A Toronto native, he lives with his partner in the city and writes in his free time. Please welcome Dan Wu reading from his brand new short story collection, Taobao.
Thank you so much, Paul. That was just a very generous introduction. Just incredible. My experience at Buckrider has been such a wonderful experience for me. So thank you to Noel and Paul, of course, and everyone at the press. And Jen Suk-Fong Lee, my editor. I'm looking around the room. I don't know if she's here or not, but everyone says this would not be possible without me, the author, but really it's Jen who has been here every step of the way, even before I thought this book could exist. And so I owe so much to her. And I'll just say a couple words before I do my reading as well. So this is my first time. Yeah, Jen is brilliant. For the first, for learning how to love China, which Noel is kind enough to reissue. I didn't read at my launch for that book, and I never read it, in fact. So this is my very first reading at a launch, and it's very exciting. What happened was my partner read at the first launch. So I'm so happy to be able to do that today. Oh, Jen is here. Hi, Jen. I had a little comic I wanted to make of Jen in the corner of my screen here, but I didn't have enough time to do that. Let me see. And the reissue, I might add, is an unabridged version of it. So it came out in a shortened version, a novella form. So it is longer now, and it's in its original form. So thank you so much, Noel, for doing that. Taobao is a collection of short stories, and they really examine young people's lives in China, modern day China, ordinary people. And this is just a topic that is really near and dear to my heart. I just love writing about ordinary people and ordinary lives. And I've tried to give as much detail in the book about their lives as possible. And I hope readers will enjoy that. So I'm going to read a very short section from the second story in the book. And I was talking to Tanya, the publicist for Buckrider, a couple of weeks ago, and she was asking me, she was saying, oh, it's a coincidence that, this character is named Danny, and I'm Dan, and the character is named Danny. So she was asking me what that was about and how I decided to name that character Danny. So I told her the truth. I told her that I used to really enjoy reading comics and making comics. And some of the artists I followed would make, I guess, autobiographical comics, and they would often create characters named after themselves. So that's where I wanted to follow in that tradition. Okay, so I'm going to start from the second story. And this story is called The City. During the first week of school, I went with a classmate, a young student from Japan, to shoot some pool. At that time, I could hardly communicate with anyone, him least of all. We played a couple of games, but because the place was so smoky, we left early. On our way back, we passed a shoddy plaza. One of the shops sold finger traps and fortune cookies, something I had never seen before. Weren't fortune cookies an American invention, a sort of edible colonial neologism? Taped to the window pane was a handwritten help wanted sign. We went inside. The shop was brightly lit, and the red uniformed staff were courteous and well-trained. I found the person in charge, a young woman of a rather sickly, pale complexion who wore her hair in a ponytail. She had an odd shape about her. Every limb on her body was short and pudgy, but her body was the opposite, long and narrow. I took an immediate liking to her because of the way she smiled. She had a toothy, goofy smile with huge canine-like incisors, which she sometimes covered with her hand when she giggled. She introduced herself as the accountant and manager. "My name Danny. I am looking for job," I said, as best as I could. My Japanese classmate was amused and tried to help by translating for me. However, he seemed to be just as hopeless a speaker as I was. "But you can't even speak Chinese. How can you have a job here?" asked the young accountant. "I can speak. I can improve." She must have thought I was cute because we sat down, and though we could hardly communicate, she fussed over me like a mother. "Why do you need a job? Do you live at the university? Do you want a cup of hot water?" She presented a form that I filled out with my personal details. I hoped she would get my contact info from the form and contact me, and I waited a few days, but she didn't. A week later, I dropped by the shop again. I didn't care about the form and the job, as she must have known. I just wanted to see her. "I'm working," she said, from her tiny closet office. Somehow, I managed to convince her to come outside on her break. "The weather is really nice outside." "I'm busy, sorry." "I don't mind waiting. Do you get a break soon?" "In 15 minutes. "Why don't I wait for you outside then?" "Shouldn't you be in class though?" "I finished early today." "I can't go anywhere, even on break." "You can stand outside your shop, can't you?" "Yeah, okay." We sat on a bench, not on the seat because it was so dusty and dirty, but on the back rail of it. Every evening, I came over to find her after work, and it turned into a routine and we became friends. We sat like that, talking until the summer passed and it was too cold. Thank you, everyone.
Hi again, everyone. Thanks, Dan. That was awesome. I love going to readings. I love going to book launches. It's been really great during the pandemic that book launches and readings come to me. I've basically been in this room for 2.5 years, and I love having the book launches and the readings come to me. Once again, you can order Dan's book, Taobao, from our website, 30% off until Sunday at midnight, and the link will be in the chat window, so you make sure you look for that. This brings me to our next book. It's time to move from fiction to poetry, and that means it's time for me to introduce you to Prathna Lor, a poet essayist, editor, and educator who has had work published in Canadian Literature, Diagram, C Magazine, Jacket 2, Poetry is Dead, Plenitude Magazine, among many others. Here's the cover of Emanations, Prathna's new book. Laura is the poetry editor at Shrapnel Magazine, holds a PhD from the University of Toronto, and they live in Montreal, that beautiful city. The book we are launching tonight is Prathna's debut full-length poetry collection after many wonderful chapbooks. It's called Emanations, and we are proud that Woolsack & Winn's Buckrider Books imprint is bringing it to you. In telling you more about Prathna Lor's poetry, I can hardly do better than what many other writers have already said. In a recent review, poet Rob McLennan wrote, "There is such an openness to Lor's ongoing meditative lyric, one that wrestles simultaneously with spirituality, self-determination, and the boundaries of commodification." Celebrated novelist David Cheriandi said, "In the luminous pages of Emanations, we encounter nothing less than a radical philosophy for being. Prathna Lor has gifted us with a vital book for our time, a needful summons to life and possibility ever abounding." And writer Lee Suksi says, "These poems conduct language in the manner of electricity passing through the body. Emanations is a compassionate transmission of mutating reverence and alienation for this life. Prathna Lor allows us to receive untouchable slumbering beneath the creek. Here is delight, terror, and peace. Wander in and receive them." And I couldn't agree more. So now, here to guide you on your wandering into delight and terror and peace is the poet themselves, Prathna Lor.
Hey everyone, how's my audio? It's good? Okay. Thank you to everyone at Woolsack & Winn. Thank you and congratulations to my fellow authors. This is a book that has sort of been sitting in me for almost a decade, and it's basically a glimpse as to how I think and feel out in the world all day. So bask in. I'd like to thank Kinesia, my editor, and Kilby for doing a super, super wonderful job with the book design. So the book opens with a quote from one of my mentors, Gail Scott, from a book of texts called Spare Parts +2. And it goes like this. "I trot feeling retrospectively like a miso-coated salmon. On several serenades for benevolence. I cannot explain myself well. I coddle doubt because it protects me. I want to unspeak the history, not because it burdens, but because it lives on the precipice. And I am there too, on the divan, bleeding a recipe. Near, like amber, a voice that is put away shackles itself to a figment. Tearful, futural, like pools of honey, I assemble all the names I inherit, and melting, I sway from asphalt to slumber. And now it warns your future self how easily to slit your walk once you have hurled it, severed all ligatures, and quieted the stream. The cracking face is a nearby sound, frenzy and torpor turning spirit against itself. And I am a thing of human descent. You have heard the voice, not as betrayal, as luminescence, a slow whistle, a slip. I am naked. I thought I could write woman, and someone had already said no, but the writing of the women is. There are so many ways you can lie beside yourself and refuse. Every day I make amendments, but they keep me alive. I scatter my sentiments, seduce cruelty. I keep my voice low, quieting intuition. I offer grace to everyone but myself. Pain or murder, that is the choice. Is that the choice? Set the scene, play it back again. We were 3 this time, maybe none. I take myself out for a walk because I need relief in the dimming world. I am looking and someone else's too. For a moment, I am denuded by a shame that isn't mine. Pull up my legs and then tell me something. I didn't think about what to do. I moved us along the interior of fear. I gathered my figure and left my scent on the crossing. I want to refuse the questioning, and if I say no, in a room I am where you are not thinking. I write endlessly in the register of prayer. Inside of my voice is our sound, thinking the fractures where I emerge from every monument, listening for my footsteps, so unloved. Can the body ever speak? I bare my throat, stretching the cavity, more unlike, piling light, indelicate. So much goes unmissed and so much goes. It seems simple how the heart stops. And if I made the swan go forth, and if I made the honeydew sweat, and if I made the everyday divine, and if I stopped to call, and if the wounded were blessed, and if the belly was caressed, and if curiosity stopped, and if I could walk, how I wandered into this corridor, swelling with delight. And no more learning, I find it unbearable to move when you are willing. All this talking makes me drowsy. Though I long for the world, I prefer justice on the seat of my mind. I sing for duty and acquiesce to the reign of the paragraph, culling and adamantine. Set the scene, play it back again. You were 2, no, at least 3, but they saw only 1. Regardless, you lived your simulated path, locked in by demand. I am called by another name, then another. The dark follows into me, and I appear on the stream, hard and aglow. But you know better to not know, to float and live glibly. You can dream in another tense. They say many things about the body once it has exited the room or returns, unoccupied by thinking. For the last demand, I envy malice. I wanted freedom to mean, like moving, so much moving. Thank you.
Thank you, Prathna. That was beautiful. I enjoyed that very much. And as you can already see, Ashley has got the link for purchasing Emanations there in the chat window. So do check it out. And just so you know, again, 30% off until Sunday at midnight. And with that discount, Prathna's book, $12.60. You're losing money not buying it, basically. So thank you, Prathna, and thank you, Ashley, for making sure everyone has the information about the book. And moving on, our next author has been very busy promoting her new novel, Mad Honey, all across the country. Every good writer knows there are, when you get right down to it, 2 basic kinds of mysteries: who done it and what happened. And there's the beautiful cover of Mad Honey right there. Who done it and what happened? Mad Honey is decidedly the latter, and I can't think of a more delicious way to find out what happened than by reading this book. So here's the deal. A guy named Beck Wise vanishes, and his girlfriend, Melissa Makepeace, has to care for the family farm. What happened? This isn't the only man to go disappearing on Melissa either, because she has no idea where her father is. What happened? Then 3 months later, Beck reappears looking pretty ragged and with no idea what day it is or where he's been, except for a bunch of memories about being bees. And this is just the beginning of a series of layered mysteries, and the story grows more weird and wondrous with each turn of the page, and you'll find out what happened. You will find out, and you'll find out why Elisha Rosno says Mad Honey is part Canadian farmhouse gothic and part family mystery and a propulsive debut. And you'll find out why Catherine Kutenbauer says that it reminds us that we are a very small part of a massive, complex, non-human world, and that when we heed the lessons of non-centrality, we can truly love. Mad Honey is a beautiful novel, she concludes. And you're about to find out who done it too. Katie Welch done it. Katie writes fiction and teaches music in Kamloops, BC. Her short stories have been published in Event Magazine, Prairie Fire, the Antigonish Review, the Thames Review, the Quarantine Review, and elsewhere. She and her family share her passion for nature and outdoor recreation, and they are creating a remote home on Cortez Island in Desolation Sound, which is kind of funny in a way because her fabulous writing sounds nothing like Desolation. Here is Katie Welch.
Thank you for that wonderful and very clever introduction, Paul. This is a very joyful occasion. It's a dream beyond a dream for this story to be out in the world, and equally amazing and wonderful to have a publisher like Welch and Wynn. Thank you to Paul and Noelle, Jen, Ashley, Tanya, and the incomparable and possibly absent Jen Suk-Fung Lee. I'll give a little bit of background about Mad Honey before I start reading. I've been a nature lover my whole life. And when I started writing this book almost a decade ago, bee colonies were vanishing. They were inexplicably vanishing. No evidence, just no little pile of bee corpses. Bees were just gone. And I had been brought up to believe that science could solve anything. So I thought somebody would find a bee and take it to a lab and examine it. And pretty soon we'd have an answer and they'd know why bees were dying by the colony, disappearing by the colony. But that didn't happen. And it was very disconcerting. And it got me thinking about a parallel human way for humans to disappear from each other's lives, ghosting basically. So that's what happens to Melissa Makepeace. She's her father vanishes one day. Her mother comes down and tells her, your father's gone. He's probably not coming back and you have to get on with your life. But she can't do that. She develops some physical tics, and the only way she can get on with her life is to throw herself wholeheartedly into her work, which she does. But when the book opens, she's 23 and she's running the farm, and it's happened to her again. Her boyfriend and the beekeeper, Duck Wise, has vanished. And her tics don't come back then. She works even harder, throws herself even further into her work. But when Beck returns, and he's got this wild and crazy story about being a bee colony, at that point, the hurt of abandonment slams into her, and her tics return. And I'm going to pick up the story right there where Beck has just come back to the farm. The front doors of the farmhouse opened and spilled a rectangular carpet of light onto the lawn. Beck padded out barefoot and closed the doors gently, pitching the porch back into silver semi-darkness. He sat on the other end of the couch and stared into the night, his black eyes insect-wide, reflecting pale half circles and pinpoints, moon and stars. Melissa wanted to stay angry with him. She wanted to shout at him for leaving, then coming back to lie about it. But she also wanted him to put his arms around her, nuzzle her hair, cover her hands with his, and press unspoken promises that he would stay into her flesh. Do you remember when I first told you about the waggle dance, he asked. It was a strange question, but she remembered. She accessed the memory hole like the plot of a favorite movie. It was another summer night, a starry one. Holding hands, they had gone for a walk along the gravel road, heading south away from Lanark. Warm wind like tender fingers brushing their skin. An owl had swooped over fields beside the road, sound of its soft hoot, glimpse of its flat, menacing white face. A childish euphoria had engulfed Melissa, and impulsively she had pulled Beck close, hummed an invented waltz, and entreated him to dance. She had worn a soft, pale green cotton dress, she remembered. He a hippie shirt and baggy hemp pants. In shadows, they could have been dressed for a formal event. Sandal-shod feet had crunched on a makeshift ballroom floor. Beck had gotten into it, taken up the melody, spun her around. The dance had ended with a passionate kiss. Honeybees dance, you know, Beck had said. Sure they do. You've never heard of the waggle dance? Waggle dance? Now I know you're fibbing. Well, I'm not. It's how the worker bees tell each other about juicy patches of nectar. They orient their bodies in relation to the sun. They point their hairy little butts however many degrees left or right of the sun's position a bee would need to turn herself to fly out and find a feast of flowers. That's not dancing, that's rotating. I'm not finished. The dancing bee waggles her hind section super fast and moves in a figure 8. The length of the dance is in direct proportion to how far the nectar mother lode is found. I've never heard of dancing bees. There are more things in heaven and hell that are dreamed of in your philosophy. Mine too. Now get this. Let's say that it's been a couple of hours since the dancing bee has been to the flowers, but she still wants to tell everyone about it. She actually corrects the angle of her dance for the rotation of the earth. Melissa remembered the night she'd learned about bee dances. After their walk, they'd made love, half dressed, her green dress bunched around her waist, his hemp pants dangling from one ankle. Back in the present, on the porch, she grunted in assent and curled up tighter in her corner of the couch, drawing her knees to her chest, defending herself against Beck's dishonesty. You didn't believe me at first, Beck said. That's right, I didn't. What's your point? She snapped. If I tell you, will you keep it just between us? Where you were this summer is a secret? Her voice cracked on the last word. Humor me for a minute. He sat motionless, holding himself steady with his arms, as if a light breeze might topple him. Melissa exhaled hard and assented with a brief downward jerk of her head. Beck addressed the lawn. I woke up in the cabin the other day and I didn't know where I'd been. My brain felt foggy, like I had a bad hangover, and I had these snatches, impressions, and they were kind of terrifying. Like when you wake up from a nightmare and the whole nightmare was based on... Beck glanced at her and stopped talking. He swallowed with difficulty. My patience is blade thin right now, Melissa warned. On being a bee colony, he said in a rush, like I was inside a beehive, and I was the whole colony. Thousands of workers, hundreds of drones. Go on. I'm listening. Her dinner curdled in her stomach. Beck spoke mechanically and miserably, like he was being forced at gunpoint to recite a story he hated. And larvae too, always cycling. Older bees dying, larvae hatching, just like the cells in your body. I dreamed there was a voice in my head, a woman's voice, narrating everything I did. I can still hear her now. Beck shuddered. You woke up from a dream you were a beehive. No, I'm telling you, it feels like I was bees, a whole bee colony. Like all I did this summer was drink nectar, collect pollen, nurse the larvae, fan the hive, take care of my queen. I was bees. Silence. Even the cicadas fell into a hush. Beck spoke softly into the night. Maybe I hit my head and this is what it's like to have a brain injury. I mean, I guess I could have fallen off my bike or been thrown from a moving vehicle. I guess I could be imagining bees because, well, you know how I used to think about them all the time. Bee brain, right? He laughed nervously, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels real. I hear the queen's voice in my head like a narrator in a documentary, talking between my ears. She orders me to send out workers, cap cells, nurse the baby bees, and inspect the comb for imperfections. I can feel the brush of bristly forelegs and smell the comb. I can even feel myself throwing up nectar, disgorging honey. He put a hand to his throat. I'm crazy, right? I must be nuts. Don't tell anyone. Please help me. He was gaping blindly, blank white moon cataracts in his eyes. God, he wasn't lying. He was legitimately scared. He was hearing voices. He was psychotic. Weren't there drugs to treat this kind of thing? She could take him to the walk-in clinic in Lanark, get a referral to a specialist, hunt down a diagnosis, and fix him. Melissa heard her mother's pep talk, urging her to action. We can do it, Lissy. We can run the farm on our own. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Katie. That was great. Who hasn't been bees? I look forward to the next time I get to be bees. And I love your book very much. If you would like to love Katie's book too, then check out the link in the chat window and you can buy it for 30% off until this Sunday at midnight. And before we get to our final reader of tonight, I'd like to tell you that 1 week from today, if you're in the Toronto area, please come to the Woolsack and Wynn Spring 2022 launch and 10th anniversary. Sorry, that's 40th anniversary celebration. My eyes are, maybe it's time for, progressives. Politically, it's always time for progressives, especially these days. If you're in Toronto next Thursday, please come to the Witchwood Barns. We're going to have an outdoor event in the courtyard of the Witchwood Barns, which is at 76 Witchwood Avenue, June 9th at 7 p.m. And like I said, this is the spring launch plus the 40th anniversary celebration. And we're going to bring back some of the authors that released books during the pandemic who didn't get to have a launch, really. So we're going to have Nancy Jo Cullen again. We're going to have Catherine Graham, Susan Purley, Rasikra Revolva, Mark Sampson, Daniel Scott Tisdale, Katie Welch, and Dan K. Wu. It's going to be a live event outdoors in the courtyard at the Witchwood Barns, mask friendly. Come, be safe, celebrate with us. We'll be bees, and we'll see you then. And finally, I did mention in that plug for next week's event, if you want more information about that event, you can go to our Instagram, our Twitter, our Facebook page. We've got it everywhere. And I did mention Nancy Jo Cullen, who is our final reader tonight. And bringing Nancy Jo and her book to all of you tonight is a special joy. Nancy Jo and I were classmates in our MFA more than 10 years ago. And so seeing the school spirit compels me to say that seeing one's classmates succeed so wonderfully and creatively fills me with pride and school spirit. So go Griffins. There's the cover of Nothing Will Save Your Life, the new collection of poems by Nancy Jo Cullen. Okay, so the title is Nothing Will Save Your Life. But I've got a bet going with several people right now that the title is ironic because what has saved more lives than poetry? Okay, vaccines. But besides vaccines, it has to be poetry. Okay, and sanitation. But besides vaccines and sanitation and food preservation, besides vaccines, sanitation, and food preservation, poetry's on the list somewhere. And if it won't save your life, it will at least make it better. And if it doesn't make it better, it won't make it worse. But if what you need is an explosion of pop culture, femininity, sex, religion, and motherhood held together with humor and lightened with fragments of joy, then I think we can agree that there's definitely a net positive in there somewhere. And if all of that is delivered in a volume that was written by Nancy Jo Cullen, a recipient of the Dana Ogilvy Prize and a finalist for the Amazon Canada First Novel Award, and this book itself receiving a starred review in Quill and Choir, then I think we're all the way back to very likely, at least possibly, at least at the very least, not impossibly, all the way back to it being something that might save your life. Here's Nancy Jo Cullen.
Thank you, Paul, for the wonderful introduction. And thank you, Noelle and Paul, Ashley and Jen and Tanya for all the work you do on these books. And also to Kilby Smith McGregor for beautiful design that has, I just love the design of this book. So I just wanted to say that. And to the other readers tonight, oh my God, everything's so good. And I really enjoyed being able to sit here and listen. I'm going to read a sonnet Corona called TBH. It's, I didn't write poetry for a long time. I wrote poetry. My last book came out in 2009, my last collection of poetry. And I kind of thought I was not going to write poetry again. And then, I don't know, all that shit that went down in 2015 and 2016. I come from Alberta, so I always believed that Donald Trump could win. And so this was sort of me responding to the world of Donald Trump rising and my children exiting home. And as much as I wanted that, there's a lot of anxiety around all those changes too. And so this is, I think, an expression of a lot of that feeling about change. TBH. Teenagers are pulling their braces off with their bare hands, illuminating the unlit valley of adolescence with their exposed midriffs, subjecting mothers to the sacrament of contempt. Mothers are crying into their cold-pressed, non-GMO organic juice. The mothers of the mothers have had too much sun, fragile little snowbirds. Their bones are disintegrating, such extremely low thresholds for enduring discomfort. They just can't. Nobody asked to be born, not to mention all that plastic accumulating in the landfill. When they said crisis response planning, they meant anti-wrinkle cream. Accustom yourself to plaintive disregard. Nobody asked to be a YouTube instructional video gone wrong, not to mention all that human trash accumulating in the belly of the whale. Not to mention all that human trash accumulating in the belly of the whale, nor the invisible doctrine of the invisible hand and its invisible backers, nor the offshore holdings of the father and sons, currently in a lost position for tax purposes. Devastating, that feeling we failed ourselves in the land of opportunity, the uncertain, sickly appetite to please. Think of something meaningful to say to the kids. TBH, freedom for the pike is death for the minnows. The body keeps the score, our long history of anxiety in the province of ongoing extirpation. Still, there's the miracle of the softening mud and dog shit, flagrant uproar of the hermit thrush, the white-throated sparrow, the brown creeper, the earth turning again toward warm days. The wonder of the body, TBH, is its capacity for punishment. The wonder of the body, TBH, is its capacity for punishment. We told our daughters, do not walk through that park. We said, you are a public space and it will not soon end. You are open for business 24/7, sweetheart. The age-old Madonna, she has no respect for herself divide. The need to think critically about a safe space. Say yes to the dress, say no, say sorry, say my fault, say please. Anyway, what she can or can't eat is practically all she will think about, a nuanced dance of tactics and selection, and the Instagram effect, now that nature isn't natural. Confession of our faults is the next thing to innocence. Follow the thought of envy. The rich live longer everywhere. The rich live longer everywhere. The rich think about think pieces. By think piece, they mean hip and knee replacement surgery. By hip and knee replacement surgery, they mean inheritance. By inheritance, they mean embrace sincerity. By embrace sincerity, they mean deposit the proceeds of social conditioning. They mean to say efficiency algorithms are their jam. They mean welcome to the so-called sharing economy. We push the walk button. We push the walk button again. We push the walk button again. We are on fire at the intersection. Our bones consumed in the noise, the weather. Some girls imagine they feel worse than they do. They get into a dither just by thinking too much about themselves. They get into a dither just by thinking too much about themselves. Their informational appliances are always at their fingertips. Their fingertips are always on the receiving end of the global supply chain, always on the receiving end of standout online dating profile photos. Always on the receiving end of palatable versions of demographically segmented market variables, always on the receiving end of the body in trouble, brought on by an insufficiency of imagination and upcycled dresses, brought on by the absence of absence and the plastic particulate matter of a bifurcated heart. Your continued participation serves as express consent. Bring your noise-canceling headphones. The Lord helps those who help themselves. Because the Lord helps those who help themselves, because all the cats want to dance with the natural mutation, because of the heat-trapping nature of Sweet Little 16, because of the inability to recall the sequence of traumatic events, because of the tendency of attention to be affected by recurring thoughts, because of record-breaking high temperatures, because of mitigation and adaptation, because of benzodiazepine, because of 21 words used to describe only women, because of sharks, dogs, mountains, elevators, and mosquitoes, because of black-leg ticks in American presidential elections, because of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, because of smiley-faced emoticons, because of clinical levels of acquisitiveness. Because of clinical levels of acquisitiveness and all the angels and saints in their spiritual gangster t-shirts, all the latest patrons of leisure, style, and taste, all the latest patrons of teenage girls, angular and hungry, feeling their supreme moment of destiny, teenage girls waiting to spring into time, and by time they mean take their husband's name, and by all the angels and saints they mean reality TV stars. They mean they have no sense of their overdetermined circumstances. This poem is bitter. This poem has gone to fat. This poem is crushing the dreams of teenage girls. It tells them they are still unloved, but those teenage girls are laughing, and this poem is an old bitch. And teenagers are pulling their braces off with their bare hands. I'm just going to read one more little sonnet called Talking Head. And thank you. Thanks everyone for coming. Once I was the source, all fountain, all legs, gone now the joy of lighting myself on fire, of running headlong into calamity, my kingdom for a pair of comfortable heels. My body is ever the enemy, ill-fated as the socialist project in the Parliament of Greed. Still, each year the birds get drunk on summer, and like us, we who invented love, us bipeds with our roaring cunts, us idiots of desire, us fat drunks, the birds, beloved of trees, return, as we must also return to what we've lost, to our mums, to our bodies, and to the earth. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy Jo. That was great. Again, I direct you to the chat window where you can find a link to our website where you can purchase Nancy Jo's book, Nothing Will Save Your Life, for 30% off until this Sunday at midnight. I truly want to thank everyone who's tuned in to our launch tonight. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for supporting our authors and our books. I want to thank once again and celebrate once again the 4 authors and their 4 books that we are celebrating tonight. That is Dan K. Wu and his short story collection, Taobao. That is Prathna Lor and their poetry collection, Emanations. Katie Welch and her brilliant novel, Mad Honey. And my dear friend, Nancy Jo Cullen, and the book, Nothing Will Save Your Life, filled with her beautiful poems. Like I said, maybe we'll see you next Thursday at Witchwood Barns if you're in Toronto. And if you can't make it to that, maybe you'll see us on Saturday, June 11th at Word on the Street at Queen's Park Circle. And don't forget that all of our books that we've launched here tonight are 30% off until this Sunday at midnight. And you don't have to put in a discount code or anything. The discount will be automatically applied when you purchase the book on our website. Thank you to Noelle and Jen and Ashley for making everything work behind the scenes. Thanks again to Dan and Prathna and Katie and Nancy Jo. Thanks to Lowell for being quiet until right now. He's been on my lap the entire time. And we'll see you soon. Woolsack and Wynn are going to be bringing you more books. We'll be back in the fall with another slate. We'll hopefully see you next Thursday at Witchwood Barns, or next Saturday at not this Saturday coming up, but the one after that at Word on the Street. And there are so many books to celebrate, and we were so glad that you came to share your evening, at least in part, to celebrate these 4 books with us tonight. And have a good evening.